Okay, here we are. It's day 4.
Yeah.
What are you up to?
This is a Lego,
Uh-huh.
and it broke away from my Lego dinosaur, and this is food, and it is a granola bar.
Who made that granola ball?
Me and my mommy.
Yeah? That tastes good?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Anything else you want to say to the students before they start learning?
Uh,
No?
be safe.
Okay, be safe. We're going to check back in later and see what projects Joaquin's up to.
Hi.
Hi.
Bye.
All right, let's go to the video. Okay, so here we are, day 4 of remote learning, continuing our World War II unit. As always, we'll start the same way. Be safe, be healthy, wash your hands, don't touch your face, stay inside. While you're inside, be sure to check Google Classroom every day. Be sure to get your attendance completed each day on time. A couple students have been trying to get attendance credit late. If it's late, we cannot go back and change the attendance and give you credit for that. We understand that this is new and that there might be some things that are confusing. The attendance may be one of them. So our suggestion is do everything on time, ask as many questions as possible or as needed. We'll be getting a lot of questions submitted through Google Classroom, and we've been trying our best to respond to all of those. Trust us, we're working very hard on our end, and we expect you to do the same so that we can all get through this together. So, as I said, we're continuing our World War II unit. Homework remains the same. Some students still need to make up the interwar period quiz. You need to make that up this week so that you don't end up in a situation where it's been so long since we practiced for the quiz that you've forgotten everything. You have a guided reading due Friday through Google Drive. Make sure that when you finish it that you click the button for turn in. I'll make sure to show you what that looks like as I showed you guys on the last video and showed you today in our Google Hangouts. Be sure to keep up with all of the daily tasks. It looks like now more students are keeping up than maybe the first day or so. So please continue to do that. We want to start strong. We want to finish strong. Those of you who still need to take the quiz, that's where you'll find it in Castle Learning. Those of you who still need to start the guided reading, the old version was on paper. New version looks like this. You type directly into the document, and then when you're done, you click on the Turn In button to turn the document into us through Google Classroom. Today's task is not a task where you're going to use the question feature. It's going to be more like the feature I just showed you. Today's is going to be more like this. But I do want to make sure to point out, if you're doing the old task still, day 1 task, day 2 task, you need to click on View Question, and you need to make sure that you are, when you type your answer or copy and paste your answer, that you put it here and you click on Turn In. Today's, though, is going to be formatted more like the guided readings where it's a worksheet. So here we go. Our aim for today is how do we compare different textbook accounts of the Japanese invasion of Nanking, China. So one event, two very, very different perspectives on the same event. So we're going to talk about perspective and a little bit about bias as it relates to perspective. So here's our warm-up. Here's an illustration. I want you to look at the illustration and figure out what do you see in this illustration below. So you're looking at it, trying to figure out who am I looking at, what are they doing, what's going on here. First question is, do you see a lady? If you do, great, good work. Question I have to follow up with that is, what age is the lady that you see in this illustration? Do you see an old lady who is looking down? If you do, great. If you don't, if you see someone else, you might see a younger lady looking away. We'll take a look at both perspectives of the same illustration. So if you see the old lady looking down, then you're going to see her eyes here. This is her nose. Here are her lips. And here is her chin. And she is looking down and she's wearing like a sort of a scarf over her head and she has like a fur coat over her shoulders. Okay, so that's one perspective. Or perhaps you might see a young lady who is looking away from you. If you see the young lady looking away, it's going to look like this. There's her left eye. We have her cheek here. The arrow that has no line there is going to turn into her ear, I think, in a moment. This would be her necklace, and there's the label for the ear. So, which perspective is correct? Is the correct one the lady looking down? Maybe not. Is the correct one the younger lady looking away? Maybe not. Maybe both perspectives are correct. Here's a similar image to look at as well. What do you see in the illustration now? Do you still see the old lady? This one's a little bit different, but if you look closely, you should still see the old lady there. Do you see the young lady looking away? Same, same example as before. It should look very similar to the last one. But there's an additional face that you might be able to see here. An old man with a large nose and a mustache. Which perspective is correct? Here's a fun one. One person looking at this set of lines, they counted basically like the pieces of wood or the blocks down there. They said, look, I counted 1, 2, 3, 4. And the person on the other side said, no, look, I'm looking at the same thing as you, and I can see that there's 1, 2, 3. Whose perspective is correct? Hopefully you're starting to realize in many cases, both perspectives are correct, but there are different things that shape those perspectives. So talk a little bit about perspective, lead into bias, and then we'll keep moving through our lesson here. So perspective versus bias. Perspective is our way of thinking about something, understanding something, such as a particular issue or life in general. It's, in other words, sort of your point of view on life or your point of view on an issue. Bias is similar, but it has this element of prejudice, which means prejudging. Judging something or someone before you have even learned about it or experienced it. So bias is a prejudice or prejudging point of view. In historical accounts, so in social studies, historical accounts that are biased tend to be one-sided and reflect the personal prejudices or prejudgment of the historian. So maybe the historian has a particular perspective and they're unwilling to look at different perspectives, and so they are then looking at history in a biased way rather than a more balanced perspective. So normally in class, we'd have a discussion about what factors shape our unique perspectives, and students usually come up with a lot of different ideas. So I want you to think for a moment, what's your unique perspective on things? For example, how might your perspective on remote learning be different than my perspective on remote learning, or maybe different from your parents' perspective or the city's perspective on remote learning, right? Or school in general, or something at school like dress code. So here's a list of just a few examples of things that might shape our perspectives or potentially biases. So our experiences in life, our age may shape our perspective of things, our gender, culture, location, meaning like where you actually live, or what type of place you live in, or what region you live in, or country you live in. Education, how much education you received, where that education was, what kind of school you went to, your religion, your career. For example, my career as an educator may give me a different perspective from you than something like on the remote learning. You might have you do have a different perspective on it than I do. Your income level can shape your perspectives on important issues, and your health can also shape your perspective. Some people may be more concerned about what's going on right now, such as myself, because of health issues that they have, right? So you're going to keep that in mind as we're going through the lesson today, because the lesson is about one event, but from different perspectives and different ways of seeing things. And all of these factors are going to relate to that. All right, so let's back up a little bit into this lesson and talk about historical context. So we're going back a little bit before World War I. We haven't talked about Japan in a while. What you should remember with Japan is you should remember the Meiji Restoration, when Japan westernized and modernized their economy. That made them very strong, and they were able to do things like imperialize other territories, and they were able to fight a war against Russia, a very large country with a lot of resources, but a country that was not industrialized or not as industrialized yet. So Japan was able to defeat them, right? So that's our context with Japan. We're going to build it up a little bit more. So in 1931, after World War I, before World War II, the Japanese army captured Manchuria, which is a part of China. Manchuria was very rich in coal and iron. Those are resources that Japan wanted. And as a result, Manchuria provided valuable resources for the Japanese economy. 4 years later, Japan invaded China. The strong Japanese army swept Chinese fighters aside. So Japan is able to defeat China or take over parts of China because of the advancements they had made. So we're going to try and fill in these blanks together. So Japan's invasion of China is an example of. Think about what they wanted, why they were able to do this. Think back to which unit this fits best with. This is an example of imperialism. Japan believed they needed to do this because they were industrialized and they needed more natural resources. So they had already gone through industrialization. Once you've industrialized, it gives you the ability to go out and conquer and the need to go out and conquer to get more resources. So because they had industrialized, this also enabled Japan to defeat China because they had more advanced military technology because they had industrialized. All right, so moving through this quickly, we're already to our vocabulary, so you want to write down the important parts of this in your notebook. The event we're talking about today is often referred to as the Nanking Massacre. It's also referred to as the Rape of Nanking because it was a very horrific event from many perspectives. You also need to know that Nanking, Nanking, is sometimes spelt with a J instead of a K, both pronounced Nanking in either case. Nanking, Nanjing. You might hear it that way, but it's the same, basically the same pronunciation. So this was a 6-week period of mass murder and rape committed by Japanese troops against Chinese civilians and soldiers who were not armed, meaning the soldiers did not have weapons on them like the Japanese did. This happened around the end of 1937 and into 1938. It was before World War II had really started, and it's estimated that there was a very wide range of possible deaths, 40,000 up to 300,000 deaths, which is hinting at this idea of perspective, the fact that some people might say it was 40,000, which is still a lot. Some people might say, no, it was even more than that. It was 300,000. Here's some photos from this time period. These photos are pretty graphic, but they are photos of what happened during this time. These are the corpses, dead bodies of massacred victims on the shore of a river with a Japanese soldier standing by. These are bodies of Chinese massacred by Japanese troops, also along a river in Nanking. A Chinese prisoner about to be beheaded by a Japanese officer. These are Chinese people who are to be buried alive by Japanese soldiers during the Nanking Massacre. And in 2008, another photo of this same scene was discovered in Japan, and that is seen as an example of verifying its authenticity because the scene was photographed in China, and also a photo of that same event was found in Japan, showing that this photo is an accurate portrayal of what was going on because the evidence existed in both countries. All right, so moving along quickly, we're getting right to the task. Today you are going to read and annotate, maybe not physically annotate it because you don't have this printed out, but you're going to mentally annotate or highlight on there the background information and the excerpts from textbooks A and B. And then in the Google document, you're going to respond to questions 1 and 5 because they're going to be about these textbooks A and B. So I'll show it to you here. Background information, read that. Read textbook A, read textbook B. All of it is about the same event, but there are different perspectives on this event. Then, after you've read those perspectives, textbook A and B, you're going to read and annotate the excerpt from document C, which is here. And after you read document C, you'll respond to questions 6 through 8, which are about document C. And then there are 2 final discussion questions which ask you to sort of look at the whole big picture. You looked at 2 different perspectives as well as an additional source and respond to some final discussion questions. So you'll turn that in through Google Docs. Make sure you click on that turn in button after you have typed your responses into the document. As always, don't forget, be healthy, be safe, check Google every day, keep up with us. We know it's a lot. Feel free to ask questions. Be patient, trust us, and we'll wrap this up. We'll go check in on what's going on with our guy Joaquin. Thank you very much. Okay, here we are. We're back. What do you...
Can I put this in the water, Mama?
Yeah, that's what we're going to try. So what's the game here?
Will it float?
Will it float? So that was a...
Crayon.
And what did it do? Float or sink?
Sink.
It sunk. What else do we have? A spoon. Let's see. Will it float? It sinks. I have a question, though. Before you put them in, I want to ask you. What do you think? Do you think that one will float or sink?
Sink.
Sink? Let's see. The pasta sunk. Whoa. Careful there.
It got squishy.
Should we try another one? Why don't you try... I'm curious about that dinosaur. That was the dinosaur in the ice cube. Will it float? What do you think? Will it float or sink? Oh, everything's sinking. Okay, let's try that one. Wait. Will it float or sink?
Sink.
Sink? Let's see. That one
Float.
floated. Very good. All right, what's next? A Duplo? Floated. Let's make some room here, though.
What's in here? Just foil.
What do you think? Will the wait, before you put it in, will the foil float or sink?
Float.
Float?
Sink.
Sink? Let's see.
Float.
Oh, it floated really good. Okay. Well, I took those out to leave room for you to try these other big ones. Let's try the shell. Float or sink? Well, that one sunk really quick. Before it goes in, tell me, what do you think? Is it going to float or sink? Float. Let's see this truck. Oh, that one sunk pretty quick. The Lego again. What do you remember what that one did?
No.
Let's see. That one floats.
It floats underwater.
It kind of does. You're right. It's a little bit under the water, and the foil is floating on top. What about the wood? The clothespin. Floats. That one floats. Do you want to try that? What is that?
Potassium.
A pistachium?
Is that why
show them the pistachium? Yeah, show them the pistachium.
This is a pistachium.
All right, try it out. It's a pecan. Try out the pistachium. Oh, you're trying out the Lego? That Lego floats. And this one, what's that one called again?
Potassium.
Let's see. What did it do?
Float.
All right, so some things floated and some things sink. And how does it taste?
Yummy.
Yummy? Good. All right, what do you want to say to everyone?
Bye.
Bye. Be
Safe.